were thought of as having good governance and good risk management turned out to have neither. Something is wrong. Although there has been growing interest in corporate governance over the last 25 years or so, and there is now a lot, there's not general agreement about what it's for or expected to do. I did a survey 10 years ago of the chairmen and CFOs of large UK-listed companies. And as part of a wider study of links between governance and wealth generation, I asked about the purpose of governance and gave three choices. A, optimising ability to create wealth. B, to protect shareholders against loss. Or C, both equally. Now 30% said to create wealth and 30% said to protect against loss, and 40% said both equally. And it was clear from the narrative comments, though, that many thought that really it was a box-ticking exercise with no real purpose at all. If you look at governance codes, you will rarely find any clear statement of what governance is for, so it's no wonder that there is confusion. And if you don't know what it's for, then it's hard to know if it's working. For many, compliance with codes has become an end in itself. When you start to look at this carefully, you'll find there are many problems. The paper sets out our hypotheses of what they are, and there are 7. In addition to confusion of what governance is for, it's clear that regulation and codes have not led to a healthy corporate culture or effective boards. Our risk and reward paper studies this in some detail, and the Creating Value paper refers to cultural and behavioural problems. But the problems are very complex, and we are conducting a separate research project on this with financial support from the academic funding body Economic and Social Research Council. We will report in June. Of particular relevance to accountants is the hypothesis that unreliable measures are used to manage performance. Value does not equal profit, and profit, particularly over a short period, does not equal performance. One can boost profit in the short term by cutting down on essential spending, such as maintenance. That will weaken the company over the longer term. Money spent on investment can take years to provide a return. Capital markets reward short-term performance and executives who deliver short-term profits. And these executives have little incentive to invest. Our reporting systems do not do a very good job in distinguishing between essential and inessential costs. There's a perception amongst many professional fund managers and boards that cost-cutting is a good thing. It may be, but cost-cutting does not necessarily equate with waste-cutting or efficiency. The reality, though, is that executives that focus on cost-cutting, sometimes over investing for growth, are usually well rewarded. Along with the pursuit of short-term profit, companies and public sector organisations have become obsessed by performance targets. Most targets are at best just proxies for the performance that is really wanted, but managers tend to focus on the target to the exclusion of the real aim. Inquiries into events in certain UK hospitals have recently provided many heartbreaking examples of what this can lead to in practice, with patients dying from lack of basic care, for example dying from thirst, while targets are being achieved. Care was the aim, but the targets, such as waiting times, were what got managed. The Culture Project is studying these matters in much more detail. Boards have less control over companies than is generally recognised. Independent directors are well aware that their power is actually quite limited, but the point is less obvious to others who assume that as the board is at the top of an organisational chart, it is really in control. In most companies, large companies, it's the executive management who have the real control, yet even they have less control than may often be realised. Executives cannot be everywhere at once, and they tend to manage by performance target, which, as just discussed, can have unintended consequences. Our 5th hypothesis is that governance is usually seen as being just about structure and process. We suggest that it should be viewed as a complete system with purpose, inputs and outputs, and people. One of the most serious problems is that boards and executives have been unaccountable. That is, that there are many examples of them not being held to account when things have gone disastrously wrong. Our last hypothesis is that regulators have pursued a simplistic and incremental approach to governance. They fail to consider the broader context, fail to consider corporate governance as a system with a purpose. This led to many unintended consequences, and sadly, the root causes remain unaddressed. We proposed that governance should be considered using this accountability framework. We start with purpose. We say that the purpose of corporate governance is to ensure that companies create long-term sustainable value. If you have this clarity, then it's easier to see what needs to be done. There are three key things that need to be done, and they can be likened to the legs of a stool. To create long-term value, the company and those within it need to perform. It's not strictly true to say that a company is owned by its shareholders. Strictly speaking, they only own the shares which give them certain voting rights. Those running the company need to be clear what sort of value they are there to create, what the purpose of the company is. It is not just about profit or maximising share price. Value and performance in creating it must be considered more broadly. Directors do not own the company either, so they need to give account to shareholders and other stakeholders how they ensure the company works towards its purpose, to create long-term sustainable value. So the second leg of the framework is informing. Information needs to be given of that performance. The third leg is holding to account. Something needs to be done with the information about performance. Directors should hold managers to account for their performance, and shareholders should hold boards to account. The consultation explores where these three legs are not working, and it finds they're not working at all well. Now, the framework needs to work at three levels, or across three interfaces. It needs to operate at the interface between boards and executive management. Management must perform, and in contributing to creating long-term value, give proper information on their performance, and boards should hold them to account. Shareholders are not a homogeneous group.